Hello there everyone, and welcome to the first tutorial for the Promethean Directive project. My name is Miser Luke, and I'll get you started. So, once you get your nation approved, you've submitted it in the Discord channel, and for nation applications, and I've said yes, you'll get a set of channels, and shortly thereafter you should receive a spreadsheet in one of your channels. It'll look a lot like this one, but it will have your empire name at the top instead of TPD calculator. Now, each one of these has 4 tabs. You've got turns, civilian, tech, and military. Starting off with turns, this is your general diagnostic to tell you what turn it is and how your nation is doing. It keeps track of a ton of information, but in general, the only one that you ever need to update yourself is adjustments. Here you put miscellaneous expenses like hiring spies or moving them, or anything that I tell you to do out of a special project. So if you want to build a canal and you say, hey, I want to build a canal, I'll say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost you. And then you can add this to your adjustments, or I'll say that I will. And it will come out of your budget. And if you put like negative 200 here, you'll see next round you've got less money. So that's what this row does. All of the other ones are automatically populated. It's only adjustments you need to fill out each turn. And some days you'll have nothing. Other weeks you may have half a dozen things here. And always list them in here. So like uh, if you're moving a spy from somewhere, put it in here. If you're hiring 2 spies, put them in here. So 2 spies in the Avm Empire, you moved 1 spy from somewhere else, and so on. If you have questions about it, just ask. I may put together frequently asked questions just for this. Next up on the civilian tab, this is where you manage most of your economy. So you've got the type of start that you have, low, mid, or high tech, and then some various instructions. These here all really tell you a lot of stuff that's going on. How much are your cities worth, your mines, how much land do you have, what amount of material and tech are you gaining each turn. Some items are color-coded, so all of the green cells here, whoopsie, not that one, represent material gain. So that just helps you to link and know what's happening between them. In general, any cells that are white or have this kind of like alternating row shading are places where you enter information. Same with these up here and these here. Anything that's shaded in a gray, you will pretty much never need to enter information. And in fact, most of these cells are protected to make sure that changes don't happen. And then you've got, in general on the screen, your starting stuff. You only need to fill this out once. I'll update your land area for you, things like that. Then you've got your cities. I'll put more detail into a later tutorial about these, but you'll populate these. In general, you can only add to these categories. You should never remove them. If you ever want to downgrade, let me know, because you're gonna otherwise get your total investment back when you should take a penalty for that. So if you want to reduce your research, let me know and I'll make sure that you don't end up with more resources than you should after you've done that. Then we've got our resources. This is where you keep track of how many resource nodes you have in your land and how they're being harvested. They should be reflected on the map as well with different icons. But in general, if you want to harvest something, you'll put a 1 here. Now you're harvesting a nickel. Maybe you've got a titanium that you're harvesting and you've even upgraded it. You put a 1 there. All of this stuff updates to reflect that. And then for spies, all of the other nations will automatically filter in here. So automatically populates good for you. Then when you want to put spies in a country, you add spies to each of these. And then this is a place that will not update. These you have to manually add to your adjustments column here. And if I go back to civilian, you'll see that, here we go. Spy costs money. 5k per turn plus 20,000 to hire and 10,000 to move. The 5k is automatically calculated, but the 20 and 10 you'll need to add each time. And then you also keep track of resource trade with other players. This is for you to figure out. I don't know what system will work best, so I encourage you to figure it out for yourself. But in general, let's say you're just importing stone, or not stone, let's go with coal from the Avim empire for the next 5 turns. And then you'll put your net trade for coal is 1, and then you might want to insert a note that says until turn 6, for example. And then once turn 6 rolls around, you can check this and remove that to make sure that you're doing well. So, yeah, up to you to track most of this. Again, if you've got questions, you can ask. And then you've also got material imports. Material is just the raw resource that you use to build things. And just keep track of that here. If you're exporting 100 to the Avum Empire in exchange for your coal trade, let's say, then you put 100 there. If the Light of the Sanctified here is paying you 50 in exchange for one of your resources, you put that there. And then this will be automatically calculated. Same with the spies too. You see that these will update your intel and counter intel, as well as what technology adds. And then over to the tech tab, here there's your main tech tree on the left, which has all the technologies. You've got some diagnostics and information at the bottom. And then you've got a huge array over here of just information about vehicle restrictions, tech restrictions, and also what resources do. So here you can see a brief summary of what each resource unlocks and how much it costs to harvest it. Here you can see the different types of vehicle types, how much they can store, how fast they can move both on the map and in-game. If you make a ship that travels 40 meters a second, I'm going to have to ask you to restrict that, both for display on the map and in any battles. This is just for balance reasons. If you want it to go faster, you can make a fast ship, which can store less. Or you can maybe even talk to me about a custom type of vehicle, but that will be a very rare exception only. And then some of these require resources, some require tech. The techs are color-coded. If it's a yes in orange, then you need an orange tech, which is gas turbines. Yellow means you need particle physics. This is what nuclear sub, but nuclear subs are right there. And then these are also underlined for vehicle types and capitalized for things in from the depths. Weapon type restrictions are mentioned here. Other is mentioned here, including some with asterisks like EMP, incendiary fuses happen to apply to a lot of different weapon types. Some things are listed that are not restricted, just because you may think that they would be. And there may be other niche things that are not mentioned here, like evasion is not mentioned here, but in general, evasion should be kept to an absolute minimum just because FTD cannot handle it. And if your craft are bouncing all over the place, then I'm going to probably ask you to change that. It's more tolerable if you're in the more meta and high-tech areas, but even then, I do want to keep it fairly minimum. Something like the Tarpon is just way too ridiculous. So keep it what you would like to see if you're watching like a cinematic. If your craft is bouncing around and looking absolutely stupid, that's probably not a good sign. And then for the main tech tree itself, there's a few features here. So just checking off boxes chooses your tech, right? Pretty simple. It gets summed at the bottom. Here you can see we spent 20, and because we don't have any, we're in the negative 20. Then to research a tech like incendiary, you must have all of the text to the left of it taken care of. So you can't do incendiary without refining. And then same applies for like if you want missile interceptors, you need missile guidance, electrical computing, and mechanical computing. And then, as a way of encouraging specialization and making your factions distinct instead of like do everything factions, you can choose to soft lock yourself out of certain technology trees. So let's say you're playing a World War II style faction that's never going to need lasers, lambs, or anything like plasma. What you can do is you can take these and soft lock yourself, as described in this text here, by making it a 4 times cost for all of them. So every single tech here costs 4 times as much. If it's 30, it'll be 120, and you can see the total cost of all these is now 640 instead of 160. If you select it, you'll see that's getting summed up there. So that makes this ridiculously expensive. You're probably never going to research that. But for each branch that you soft lock, you can make one cheaper. So let's say you really want to have nuclear weapons for some reason. You can make this half cost. And now instead of this being 30, it'll go down to 15. And that gets charged right down there, negative 15. So that's what you can do this for all of the trees. Just make sure that you don't get a discount any more than you use, or an error will show up here. Uh, and once you've done it to one of them, you can't undo it. So make sure that your decisions are final, because you can't renege on those choices. And then another thing to note is that industry has different numbers here because it's such a big tree in comparison. So you can only get a 20% discount at best. Another thing to note, which a lot of people have asked about, is heavy armor and armor in general. All other types of armor are not restricted, but with heavy armor, you're only allowed half a meter. Let's see. Yeah, half a meter on the belt and about a meter on critical components. If you want to unlock more, heavy armor tech will get you 1.5 meters on the belt and 2.5 on vitals. And titanium is also required to get that upgrade, which is a resource. And then you can also get thick heavy armor 2, which gives you more based on vehicle cost. And another heavy armor exception is that it should be listed somewhere. Yeah, planes and light airships are not allowed to have heavy armor, just because those are very light craft. Like if you have like 1 or 2 random blocks so you can support a neat aesthetic feature that otherwise would be really flimsy, I'll accept it, but you shouldn't be like coding any of your internals in heavy armor if you are a very light vehicle type, like planes and light airships, which have, yeah, caveats mentioned there. And then to get to the military tab, this is the one that interfaces the most with From the Depths. Each time that you have a vehicle that you want to use, you'll put the information in here. The ship's name, any notes about how you want it to spawn in-game, the type, listed here. You can see more info on the right over this way. The health, just leave it as is. I'll update them as I approve your designs. Officers, the number of that particular one that you want. Stuff like speed, cost, and size. This is a gray tab, so you won't be ever be updating this. And then how many resources you want to give it in a given turn. So this is for a per ship basis, is what these rows here are for. And then for the fleet level basis, you've got your fleet name, first fleet, second fleet, whatever you want to call it. You've got the travel type. Is it sea only, land only? Is it stationary like a fort? Or is it airborne or amphibious, in which case it's air? You can have your fleet officers. This health here is calculated, so you'll never touch this one. An approximate location. In general, it's just helpful for you. You don't need to put something. You can just have it empty. But don't put a number there because of the way I do my math. You've got your status, which says what your ship is allowed to do and how much it will consume while doing that. While a ship is being built, it won't consume anything. If it's in mothball, it won't consume anything either. But that means that it's not available for another week if you choose to reactivate it. So if you put something into mothball and then 3 turns later you're like, shoot, I need that, you won't get it until your 5th turn after that. So 2 turns after you decide to reactivate it. And that'll be like you put a note in the status that you want to reactivate from mothball. Base is when you're just idle, but inside of a port that has enough dock capacity for your fleet. Idle is not moving, but not near a base, or not in port, in a port that can handle your fleet. Moving is just moving. The upkeep gets reduced. It'll be range from 2 to 5% based on how far you're moving. And then if you're in combat, normally you won't know this when you submit your orders, so I will just calculate this in the background for you. But just know that if you're in combat, it takes about 10% of your cost in your vehicle's cost and materials as your upkeep. Stores are managed over here. You can see what percentage that is. So let's say we've got a ship which costs 500,000. It can store up to half of its cost in stores. If we resupply it by 50, you can see that we're at 10% of your cost in stores. So this sometimes won't be able to go up to 100%. For ships, let's say I want to do 600 or even 400. That's less than 100%, but it's more than you can store, so that's a no bueno. Cargo ships could easily go over 100 though, so keep that in mind. And then I'll always update your current stores. That'll be something I manually do, and also your current location. And then you can also do a midpoint. More details are here, but that helps you to put a jag in your travel if you need to make it around a peninsula, or if you want to do like an out and back mission and always end at a home port, if you want to have like protection there if you're worried about being attacked. And then there's also stance, which I totally skimmed over, which says basically the range at which you will engage in combat if your fleet encounters another fleet that you're at war with. So evade is the most compact. You can get within 15 pixels on the map. Uh, or if you're both on evade, you can have a distance of 30 pixels between you, which is equal to 2 of the small white grid cells. And anything less than that, and you'll engage in combat. Anything more, and you'll miss. If you go up to search, though, and they are on search, then you can engage up to 5 times further away. So 150 pixels or 10 grid squares. So it's the sum of your two. If one's on evade and the other's on search, it'll be 6 grid cells and 90 pixels, for instance. It also affects your formation. If you're in evade, I'll probably spawn your vehicles uncomfortably close together, just because that's how you would travel if you're trying to be discreet. Whereas if you're in a dispersed formation, your vehicles will be spread out wide, whether to your benefit or not. And if you're on patrol, you get more choice about your formation. And if you have like spotter aircraft, I can spawn those in the air, while if you've got like something similar for an evade or a search formation, they'll probably be less ready on your ships. So if you've got a carrier, for instance, if you're evade, you have to launch from your deck. If you're search, you have to launch from your deck because they'd have to come back to refuel. But if you're on patrol, then you get to do whatever you want with them. They can be on your deck, they can be in the air. Just let me know and I'll make it happen. You've got materials that are displayed each turn. Let me set this back to 0 so that's good. Uh, this I guess dark green text is displayed in many places. And this blue one for tech. So you can see free materials and tech, and so on. So that's just to help you out to know. They're all linked together, so they'll always share the same thing. And then one last thing to note for military is that repairing is over here. This will display how many of your ships need certain types of repairs. If they're less than 5% damage, they can repair in place using stores on hand. If they're 10% damage, they can repair in any port. If they're more than 10%, they'll need to repair at an actual yard that has build capacity. And it will go at a rate of 10% per turn, meaning that if you take a lot of damage, it might take you a while to get back into commission. Honestly, I might actually change this up to 20% per turn, just because the way that turns are looking. But this note will be updated if that changes. And then yeah, you can see details here, and also ships that are lost if they go below 55%, which this one's currently registered as. If you want more fleets, you can just copy this, Control C and Control V. Everything should still work fine. If it doesn't, let me know. If you want more rows of ships in a single fleet, if you want to have more than 6, that's harder to do, and send me a message and I'll make it happen, just because of how the formulas all work here. But spamming more fleets is totally fine. You can copy and paste that without a problem. That should conclude everything for this tutorial. I'll get one more out, which is like how to set up for turn 0. I'll go into some things in more detail, and also cover the unique stuff for turn 0. And then I'll have a more comprehensive tutorial explaining what to do each turn after that. You'll see that turns are split into setup, which is your turn 0, military turns, and civilian and military turns. In summary, the distinction is that every single turn, which is twice per week, you'll make a military action. This tab will index forward, so your stores will be depleted. You can resupply your ships. Your ships will move. Your ships can have combat, and so on. You can build ships. You can repair ships. But only on civilian and military turns, which are submitted on the weekends, will you get technology to progress, and will you get your economy to progress. So you don't actually have any income on military turns in terms of materials or technology. This is kind of similar to the game Diplomacy, which does a similar yearly system for deploying units and twice yearly system for military moves. And this is a way of basically making sure their fleets can be fairly dynamic on the map without putting a ton of turns for like the more spreadsheety, boring civilian stuff. So hopefully I've explained this all well. Feel free to ask in comments or in the directive itself if you've got questions. But I'm super excited to have you all here, and I look forward to seeing what all of you can do for the directive. Thank you all, and until next time.